victim, execution lashes or monetary payment. They are punished with the lashes instead. This unusual type of hazama punishment is discussed in the very first Mishnah tract. This is what we're going to start off with. It's exceptions to the rule. It's so interesting that for some reason the tractate starts off with exceptions, not with the normal. That's the way it is. And we're going to hopefully get, at least tonight or if not next time, into the guts of that. Well, how do you understand that unusual punishment? Is that a zomim punishment, or is it like a different type punishment for a different prohibition? That's going to be a very important central question that's going to go through this whole Mishnah. Conditions for hazama punishment. Two major conditions must be met in order for the hazama punishment to apply. Number one, witnesses are not liable to the punishment unless their victim has been convicted. If they are discredited before the court hands down a guilty verdict, they are not punished. And yet, number two, if the court already carried out that the victim has been executed, they no longer be punished by the court for their crime. The rationale for this law and what circumstance applies in its detail is described in the commentary. So you have a very limited window. The only time hazama applies is if they were found guilty and they weren't yet punished. And at that moment, if witnesses come in and say, it's not true, you guys weren't there, that's when they're believed, and that's when you do the kash hazama. The laws of hazama play an important role in the laws of all testimony, even when it's not a hazama issue. Since any testimony not susceptible to refutation by hazama, ages that you cannot be mazim, is not admissible. This is a key point that will be addressed right away in Tosfos that we're going to get into. It's not just that if zomim happens, then you punish him with kash hazama. Every single testimony in the books to be accepted has to be able to become a zomim testimony. If for some reason they can't do kash hazama, we'll see. If for some reason, then the testimony is thrown out. It's not kosher testimony. It has to be able to be subject to the kash hazama. This means that witnesses that must state specifically when and where the incident took place, for if they are vague about the time and place of the event, they cannot be refuted in the process of hazama. Similarly, if the very nature of the testimony is such that they would not be punished for testifying falsely, even if they are found to be zomimim, and we'll see why, such testimony is also inadmissible, and the whole thing is thrown out. Finally, the last thing here, which we mentioned before, hazama applies only in the limited, clearly defined case described above. Any other means of refutation, even if the victim of an alleged murder appears in the courtroom alive and well. This is called in Hebrew, ba harag baraglov. Two guys are testifying that Michael killed Stephen. Bezdin hears the testimony and finds Michael guilty. And as they're ready to carry out death sentence and kill Michael, Stephen walks into the courtroom. There's no question that these witnesses are liars. No question. But they're not a zomim. They're not a zomim. They're liars, but they're not a zomim. Though conclusive in its refutation of the witness, obviously not going to kill the guy, does not render them zomimim, and therefore does not subject them to the punishment decreed for zomim witnesses. If the testimony of two witnesses is contradicted by that of other witnesses, a situation known as hakasha, or in other words, tre v'tre, 2 against 2, contradictory testimony, there is no reason to accept one set as more truthful than the other. Even if one set of witnesses consists of numerous people, you have 10 against 2. 2 are like 100, no difference. While the other set is testimony of only 2, the halacha does not favor one set over the other. Since the Torah credits the testimony of 2 witnesses as valid, larger and smaller sets of witnesses have equal validity. This is the principle of Trei Kamei. 2 witnesses are the equivalent of 100. Thus, if the testimony of all the witnesses leaves us with 2 clearly conflicting versions of the events, each supported by at least 2 witnesses, the impasse cannot be resolved on the basis of their testimony, which makes it so interesting that by zomim we don't say that. 2 guys say, we saw this, we were in New York and we saw it, and 2 guys say, you were not in New York, you were in Chicago. The second set's believe. And the obvious question is why? Why don't you say it's 2 and 2? They say they're in New York, they say they're in Chicago. Well, why don't you say it's a regular 2 and 2? Okay. So far, that was it for introductions. Let's get now to the Mishnah and start the tractate. So we got the first Mishnah, Ketzad Eidim Nasan Zomim. How do witnesses become zomim? The Gemara is going to say that it obviously does not mean how do witnesses become zomim, because we're going to not do kash hazama. So let's just simply reread it the way the Gemara is going to say, witnesses that you don't do kasha zomim, how do you deal with them? How do you make them zomim? Two witnesses came and they said about a certain person that he's the son of a divorced woman. Now, of what consequence is it that he's the son of a divorced woman? Doesn't matter to us if his mother's divorced. The answer obviously is that we're talking in a case, well, there could be two cases actually. Right. So the case would be when the father is a Kohen and the mother, if she was divorced, was not allowed to marry the father. And if that union did happen, then the Kohen is an invalid Kohen, called a Chalal. So when they testify that this guy is a son of a divorced woman, what they're saying is that he's an invalid Kohen. Oh, ben Chalutza, or his mother had Chalitza done to her. Chalitza is when, should know, for two brothers, one dies without children. The wife is not allowed to marry a new person until the brother makes a ceremony involving a shoe and spitting of called Chalitza. And if she has that ceremony done to her, she is now prohibited to marry a Kohen. Now that, according to almost all authorities, is not Torah law, that's rabbinical. Because it looks like a divorced woman. Just like a divorced woman became permitted to the whole world through the divorce process, this Chalitza became permitted to other men through the Chalitza process. So it's rabbinical. Either way, they're saying, but the bottom line is, rabbinically or not, she can't marry a Kohen. She did marry the Kohen. That's what they claim, and therefore the son is an invalid Kohen. So now the question is, if they're found zomim, what do you do to them? So the Mishnah says, Ein Omer, we don't say Yasazeh ben Gusha ben Chalusa Tachta. We don't say, let's make them now an invalid Kohen, as if they're the son of a divorced woman, or they're the son of a Chalusa lady. Elalok Arbon, rather they get lashes. Let's see Rashi here, okay? We'll stop here in the middle of the Mishnah. We'll stop here. Let's see Rashi. Let's start with the second line. Es ish ploni. We said this person, Kohen, who is a Kohen. Now, why do Rashi have to tell us that the man that they are testifying on is a Kohen? Let's say he wasn't a Kohen. Oh, so I said it wouldn't make any difference because if he's not a Kohen,
there's nothing you're taking away from him.
Then even if you'd make him, it would have no validity because he's not a Kohen anyway.
Right. Why does Rashi have to tell us that? Why can't we figure that one out ourselves?
Right. Well, the question would be, see, it's all really in if we would do it. But is there a way to say, huh?
If he's Yisrael, he's allowed to marry a Kohen. If he's a Ben, if he's a Momer, whatever Yisrael is.
So that's what?
A legal union?
Well, so it's a very unusual case you're saying. You're saying exact home run case, but it's a very unusual what you're saying. Because normally you can't have that. Because normally they still can marry a Grusha, so it's impossible to have a case like that.
For these two.
Normally. But the question is, what I'm saying is said by, someone said, why don't you say this? Say that maybe we could have concocted such a thought that we should invent a chalal by Yisrael that his daughter can't marry a Kohen. In other words, if you would have done kasha zamam, maybe that would have given the novelty of applying a chalal to a Yisrael in a limited capacity.
That's not kasha. There's a lot more that it entails by possibly a real Kohen than possibly this made-up chalal.
The Kohen would have gotten much worse, he's saying, because he... Well, we'll get to that. We'll talk about the truma. Why for some reason the money part didn't come up here. So all came up was becoming a... That's a valid question also. There's financial issues here. It's not just the fact that he can't marry a Kohen, so he can't do service in the temple. It's a lot more than that. He's losing serious money. The Kohen is supported. That's the 24 gifts that a Kohen gets. The truma and the shearings and the bikurim, what all the gifts you get are to support the Kohen. He should be able to serve in the temple. So when they say he's an invalid Kohen, that's not just hurting him in one way, they're hurting him financially also. Yet that's not, for some reason, that's not brought to, we'll see. But be it as it may, the Rashi says that, we're only talking about a Kohen, which is a simple way to go. There are others who are going to say some sort of idea of Yisrael maybe. But either way, Shehu ben Grusha. So Rashi says, B'fonenu, in front of us, Niskarsha imo, his mother was divorced, Kodem Shenolad, before he was born. Now, the Tais Yontif says that's a little, the simple understanding of those words are not correct for a simple reason, right? In other words, if a lady, a wife of a Kohen, is pregnant, and she gets divorced and has a baby boy, the boy may be the child of a divorced woman, but the boy is a perfectly kosher Kohen. The father didn't marry a Grusha. So when Rashi says before he was born, it doesn't mean before, obviously it doesn't mean before he was born. It means before the father had relations with the mother and caused him to be born. That's obvious. Vareu Chalol, says, and he's invalid. Kohen Upostle is invalid. Ein Omrim, so Rashi says in Husmu, if they became Zomim, Vehain Kohanim, and they are a Kohen, Yasazem ben Gerushim Chalus. So don't say, let's replace him to be the son of the divorced woman, L'kayim bo kashazam, to make fulfill them kashazam. Ella rather Sobigas Arbam, he gets 40 lashes. Gemara first time, the Gemara will explain the reason.
So Rashi's telling us that even if he is a Kohen, and you could make him, give him these issues, these same punishments.
You don't. Right, and the Gemara will explain why, but right, that's clearly, yeah, absolutely. We don't do that. Okay, now I want to skip to the Gemara on 2b before we see the Taisus and try to delve into this. So let's, if you look on 2b, where it says Omar Ula. Around 13, 12 or 13. Omar Ula with a little aleph is.
Right in the middle of the line is Omar with an asterisk.
Okay, I got it.
Omar Ula.
Oh, you don't have the asterisk. Right there, Omar Ula.
There's an aleph there. Omar Ula. Ula said, Ramaz Laidim Zorim and Atar Minayin. Where is there an allusion to the concept of false witnesses in the Torah? Now, the Gemara doesn't even let him finish the statement to explain it. The Gemara jumps in right away and says, what are you talking about? Ramaz Laidim Zorim and a hint to Zomim? No hint. It said black on white in the Torah, right? Where's a hint in the Torah? You have to honor your parents. Yeah, hint. Right? So a hint for false witnesses, it's black on white. It's written in Torah, Asisim lo kasha zomim. You should do like he planned. Black on white. Ella, rather, Remez la'edim zomim and shalokim min atar minayin. How do you know false witnesses get lashes from the Torah? Meaning, in the case when you're not doing the normal kasha zamam, for some reason, to be explained, in such a case, the substitute punishment you will do will be lashes. How do you know that? Dichsiv, because it's written, V'etzdiku es hatzadik, you should make righteous the right man. V'eshiu es harashi, you should make wicked the bad man. V'haya and bin, if you understand, hakos harasha, give lashes to the wicked man. Mishum v'etzdiku es hatzadik, v'eshiu es harasha, v'haya and bin hakos harasha, because you made one man right and one man bad. Therefore, automatically you can give lashes to the bad person. Why do you get lashes? Rather, which refers to the case when originally witnesses came and they falsely accused a righteous man of doing something bad. They made him into a rasha. And a second set of witnesses come, we call them mazimim, one who caused zomim. They restored the righteous man to be righteous, the Meikara, who was originally righteous. V'shavinu lahani rishayim, and they made these second set into wicked people. V'haya and bin hakos harash. If you understand, give lashes to the wicked man. So the Gemara says, do you need this to tell you to give lashes? But typically, why can't I derive it? Milosana. There's a prohibition. Don't bear false witness against your fellow Jew. Losana b'reacha et shakar, right? So losana is a negative prohibition. Negative prohibitions carry with them a punishment of lashes. So the fact that these guys have transgressed the prohibition of bearing false witness should alone obligate them to get lashes.
So we get two sets. One false witness, one for zoning.
Now, you're going to see on Daf Daled a opinion of Meir, who actually says what you're saying, that there is two sets of lashes for a false witness. The Chachamim argue, and we're clearly going with the Chachamim right now. So there's only one set. Why there's only one set? We'll leave it when we get to Daf Daled. But there's only one set of lashes. So where do you need it from? This whole tzedikah, take it from Lasana. Because it's a negative prohibition that has no action to it. And this is remember, where do we get the whole concept of getting lashes from? Remember, where was the source that you get lashes when you do a negative prohibition? From the prohibition of muzzling the animal. Now that's an action. So here, bearing false witness is a negative prohibition that does not have action to it. Any negative prohibition that doesn't have action, and locum does not get lashes. Let's see the Rashi to here, and then we're going to dig into that Tosis. Okay? Rashi says, Remez leidim zomen shlokin. It's the small lines, the thin lines. 12th line, the thin lines. Right? Remez leidim zomen shlokin. A hint. Okay. Remez leidim zomen shlokin. Eidei ben grusha, witnesses against a divorced, a son of a divorced woman, or Eidei galus, or witnesses against the guy who was obligated to go to exile, which we didn't get. It's the second case in the Mishnah. Shepatra Makkos in hazama. The Torah said they don't get kasha zam, they don't get what they tried to inflict. Minayin shein lokin. How do you know they get lashes? Well, the Kamei part of the Gemara will ask as we go along. Why can't you just derive it from the prohibition of lasana? Mishum v'stigos hatzadik bitmiya. If it's stigo v'shiu b'dayanim kamar, if the concept of making righteous and making wicked is applying to judges, with Tzaddik v'Rasha v'Balei Dinin, and the Tzaddik and Rasha we're talking about here are the litigants. Lama leave it Tzaddik Tzaddik. Why does it say they'll make righteous the righteous person? Lichlev, let it just say, Ki yarib ben anashim, if there'll be an argument between people, v'nikshu alam mishpat, they'll come to judgment, u'shvatim. They'll judge them, v'hayim ben Makkos. And if you understand, you'll give them lashes. Lama husgaron kasid kasadik. Why does the Torah have to mention the fact that you're vindicating or making righteous the good guy? Is it true that every time you find one guy righteous, one guy wicked, you give lashes? A guy accused someone else of fraud in a financial dispute. You're going to give lashes for that? It's not lashes. The Asa Kral and Muslim Makkos, the Torah is depending the lashes. But Tzedikah v'Shiyah, when finding this guy righteous, this guy wicked, Al Karchach, rather it must be. Be'edim Mishtai, we're talking about witnesses. Edim Shkarim, false witnesses, Shiu Tzaddik. They made a good guy bad. They smeared, they years they were called Bashmutz. They made a guy, bad rumors against the guy. Ubal Achem v'Zimim, others came and said, you guys are false witnesses, you weren't there. But Tzedikos Hadnidin, and they returned the defendant to be righteous again. Shut Tzaddik, who is righteous. V'Yeshiva Sa'edim Hashem, they made wicked the bad witnesses. V'Haya and Ben, if you understand, Hakas Esarasha. In Hazama Zubas Malkasi, if this case of Hazama is subject to the prohibition of lashes, She'ena Yachal L'Kayim Badin Hazama Gemura, you can't do regular full Hazama. Going Be'edei Ben Grusha, like the case of witnesses, or the saying about the son of a divorced woman, or galus, or of exile, Pilo HaShayfet, the judge should make him go down, V'yikol and hit him. But typically, why can't I learn that from Losane? Kol Anshe Lavin Makkos, all punishments of negative provisions are lashes. Unless the Torah explicitly said another punishment. For example, Don't steal. If you steal, return it. So a different punishment, not lashes. Don't leave over the Paschal lamb to morning. If you do, burn it. Different punishment. But otherwise, the punishment always is lashes. Here, where I can't give the punishment that it says, the kasha zamam, because of whatever reasons we'll see, Yilku, let them get lashes. The Gemara will derive that later. Okay. So now we are ready to gather all the things we've learned tonight and hopefully approach this tosis and try to dig into the depth of this replacement punishment of lashes, what it is. Okay? Now remember one thing before we start. There's a principle, we spoke about it, that testimony of witnesses, to be kosher accepted testimony, has to be subject to the punishment of kasha zama. If witnesses for some reason can't get kasha zama, then the testimony, even though nothing was done against it, is invalid. You throw it out. So edus that can't be subject to that punishment are not valid witnesses. Tamer. So Thursday is a question, and an obvious question. Since these two guys who are testifying against the guy, that he's an invalid Kohen, if they would become Zomim, Ein Nasin Ben Grush V'Chalutza, so they will not be subject to the punishment of being considered a divorced son of a divorced woman. In Kain Gambis Yuzmu, so even if they did not yet get the Kasha Zamam, Eich Yasa Alpiyam Ben Grusha. How could we make them now into a Ben Grusha as punishment? The Hachi Hu Emes, even if that's the truth, that he really is a Ben Grusha. Now, I'm not disputing whether it's true or not, but I'm telling you that's invalid testimony. There's a technical reason here that would make the testimony unacceptable. Like all these legal loopholes, when there's some reason that the testimony has to be thrown out, even though a fact may be true. So even though it's true that the man may be the son of a divorced woman, but the testimony is unadmissible in court. V'amai, why? This is testimony that you can't do kasha zamam to. Why can't you do kasha zamam? Because the Mishnah says you don't make them a ben grusha ben chalutza. V'yein za'edis, and this is not good edis. It's not good testimony. The first question is, once you tell me that for whatever reason, I'll talk about it later, but for whatever reason, you do not make the witnesses into a ben grusha, son of a divorced woman, as punishment for having borne false testimony, once you don't do that, then the testimony to begin with should have been invalid, even if you didn't have eight zomim. Anytime two witnesses come and say his father had no right to marry that woman, and he should be an invalid Kohen, that testimony should not be admissible in court. That's the question, right? Simple question. V'yeshama Tosfos answers, Kivan the Lokin, since they get lashes, have a kasha zamam. That's called kasha zamam. And that's called edus that could be subject to the punishment of hazama. Now, what does Tosfos mean? What do you mean it is kasha zamam? It's not kasha zamam. Right? Torah said, do to him what he tried to do to that guy. Well, you're not doing to him what he tried to do to that guy. He tried to make him an invalid Kohen, and you're just giving the guy lashes. It's not the same thing.
They're trying to say just the fact that we administer some sort of punishment. That's enough.
Then you can make it. Then you can make it for anything. You can just say, okay, we're going to give lashes. If you're an eight zone, we're going to give you lashes. That's done. You're done.
Well, so. We didn't make up the punishment. Right? We saw on Gemara and on side 2 that the punishment is derived from a pasuk in the Torah. It's Tigro Sadik. So there's a clear derivation in the Torah to give this substitute punishment when you can't do kasha zama.
But why are you limiting it to ben grusha glissa? Make it any place where you can't actually do the actual punishment. So okay, we have this pasuk that says we can give you lashes.
Well, you may be 100% right, because the next case of Mishnah, which we didn't do yet, when a guy testifies that someone has to go to exile and they're found to be a zomim, and we don't punish him by putting him in exile for whatever reason the Gemara will talk about, The Mishnah says you actually do give him lashes.
Right.
So you see that the substitute punishment of lashes was not limited to the case of a ben grusha. Substitute punishment of lashes does apply to more cases.
So why is there any case where you can't have a zoma?
Because I think maybe you can make a difference between a case that it's not possible to make a zoma. Right? You can't possibly make someone a ben grusha b'chalutza.
Well, but we give them lashes.
Right,
By this
so
point,
that's the point. When it's not possible, we can substitute the kasha zamam to.
But by saying that, you now make it possible to make any witness zone. Because if it's not possible to do to them exactly what they're going to do to you, we'll give them lashes based on this pasuk. It's done. They're zone.
So, Tosis is going to ask you a question. You got to hold on. Tosis is going to ask. Tosis is going to bring a case, at least a case in a minute, where the Gemara calls it antiyachal azima, and you can't. And Tosis is going to say, well, who cares? Even if you can't give capital punishment for whatever reason, but give lashes like this pasuk says. Tosis will ask that. Let this substitute punishment always be good enough. But one thing I want to just point out to you, that at this point in Tosis, when Tosis seems to be saying is, how do you understand these lashes that the Torah made as a novel punishment? This is critical to understanding this whole concept of these lashes. What are they? You were throwing around so many different types of punishments. You're throwing around a kasha zaman punishment, and then you're throwing around a losana punishment. Losana you can't get because it's a prohibition without an action. Kasha zaman you can't do because the Gemara said later you can't do it. So for some reason here I am doing something, right? I'm doing something that I can't do. Under normal rules, these lashes make no sense. So the Torah is saying, nonetheless, give him lashes. Okay, so now how do I take these lashes now? Where do I put them? Now that I've been told to make an exception to all rules, and even though I shouldn't have given them lashes, to give them lashes, where do I put them now? How do I file them away now? Is this a zomin punishment, or is it a losana punishment? How is these lashes are not typical no matter what. So when Tosfos says these words, that right, since they get lashes, have kasha zamam, that's called kasha zamam. And now I'm reverting to the normal status of witnesses that's called witnesses that you could be mazim. What Tosfos could be telling me, could be argued, we'll see as the going to stable going, but what could be argued is that Tosfos is telling you, you have to now open your eyes to a broader understanding of kasha zamam. And in the limited vision in the beginning of Tosfos, we said kasha zamam means what you tried to do. And if you try to get lashes to the guy, you have to get lashes. You try to kill the guy, you have to get killed. You try to make money, you try to make money. And if you try to make an invalid coin and you're not getting invalid coin, you're not getting kasha zamam. Are you getting? I don't know, but you're not getting kasha zamam. And what Tosfos is saying in this approach, we'll see if the other approach agrees. But in this approach, Tosfos is going to be saying is that you open your eyes a little bigger. And what the Torah is telling you now, but we wouldn't have thought of this. We would have said the way but the Torah is telling you is that you got to look at a broader picture of kasha zamam. And normal kasha zamam means the exact same amount of try to do. But there's exceptions that kasha zamam can mean what he tried to do to him, he do back to him, lashes. Like sort of a, but it's an exact punishment because you tried to do that, we do this. You did this, we do that. It's not exactly the same, but that's what we're doing because you tried to do this. Nothing to do with the bearing false witness and none of that. It's just it's a substitute kasha zaman. Kasha zaman plan B. There's a plan A, make him a false and invalid coin. There's a plan B that I have to sometimes substitute, but it's going to fit in, and therefore the old rule I have that Adim have to be subject to the punishment of kasha zaman, according to this approach in Tosfos, is fine and dandy. The lashes are good enough for kasha zaman. That's the novelty of what Tosfos is saying, right? And the question Tosfos didn't understand like that, and the next answer Tosfos is not going to understand like that. But in this answer, Tosfos is willing to accept the fact that if they're getting lashes, substitute kasha zaman, that's good enough for yachal azima, for the rule they have to be. Now Tosfos gets involved in a side question, and this is exactly the question that Ephraim was just dealing with Aaron David about. Rikasha, to tell you the case like this. The imkain, if so, now you have to have a little background here. The Gemara says the following scenario. Gemara says that if two guys come and they bear testimony against a lady who's married, or in law she's married, and she's having relations with another man. Now that's a capital offense. That's capital punishment. However, these two guys didn't give a warning to her that she's not allowed to, normally, to punish a person with lashes or with death penalty, there has to be a warning. And the person has to hear the warning and nevertheless do it. It always bothered me a little. The guy, capital punishment and lashes, which are true punishments. But, I always say, what was the guy thinking when he did the sin? Imagine a guy in what do they call the place? What's the name of the ISIS headquarters? Rafik? Whatever. Guy's there, and he goes ahead, and he does something against the Muslim religion right in front of everyone. And they're watching. What is this guy, stupid? I mean, you don't want to keep it, don't keep it. But what is he doing in front of everyone for? He knows what's going to happen, right? It's always bothering me. Like, what's the guy? The guy has two witnesses, and they're warning him, don't do it, because of the consequences. So the answer is, the guy obviously, the guy is so caught up in his sin that he just can't hold himself back, a fit of rage, right? He's just going to do it anyway, even though he knows he should have done when no one's watching. So, be it as it may, but that's clear a requirement. There has to be a warning to get punishment. Now, the Gemara talks about a case there where a lady had relations with a man. She is subject to the death penalty, but she didn't get a warning. That's the case the Gemara says. How could she be subject to the death penalty if she didn't get a warning? So Gemara says that a lady who's like a scholar, Gemara says, according to one opinion, doesn't need a warning. Not everyone, but one opinion. We're going in that opinion right now. She doesn't need a warning. So therefore, two witnesses came. They say they saw this lady having relations with a married man. So two witnesses came and said, "What are you talking about? You guys were in Chicago." So the witnesses can say, Gemara says, could say, no, you can't give us the death penalty. Because when we came to say testimony against her, we didn't know she was a scholar. We saw a lady having relations. We came to say that her husband's not allowed to live with her now, which is the law. If a lady has relations willfully with another man, her husband's now prohibited to her. So that's all we were coming to do. We weren't coming to give her the death penalty. That's what the Gemara says. If they can say that, they're not subject to the prohibition of kasha zama, because they can get off the hook, right? So now the Gemara says it goes a step further. Even if they are not found to be false, they're true witnesses, and she did have relations, you can't give her the death penalty. Because of the old rule that witnesses, to be kosher witnesses, have to be subject to the prohibition of kasha zama. And these Adam can't get the kasha zama. So Tosis is going to ask, that's all fine and dandy until you got to the Gemara in Makkos. But once you got to the Gemara in Makkos that said that substitute punishment of lashes suffices to be kasha zama, the way Tosis is understanding it, so in this case also, these guys are off the hook from getting death penalty, so let's just give them lashes. And if you give them lashes, that's good enough for kasha zama. Have a good day. What's the whole problem? That's Tosis' question, which is exactly the point you two were addressing before. Exactly on the nail, right? She doesn't get killed. Since they don't get killed, they could say, we just came to make her period the husband. We were coming to make her death penalty. It's witnesses that you can't be mazim. Was the Gemara to say, nevertheless, they should still get lashes, just like the witnesses by us get lashes, and that should suffice to make it into subject to the prohibition of kasha zama. Tosis gives a side answer. Really, you're right. However, the Hasam over there, since they were trying to make capital punishment, death penalty, they were planning to kill someone, the fact that you'll give them lashes if they're caught is not enough for kasha zama. Kasha zama and malchus can only suffice cases when you're dealing with minor consequences. When you're dealing with death penalty, that's not enough. The behedik siv, because it says black and white in the Torah, nefesh benefesh gabe azama. The word a soul for soul by azama. The aegis nefashos that have capital punishment cases of capital punishment. It's not considered susceptible to the laws of hazama by just giving lashes. But in our Mishnah, so even el l'shabi ben grusha ben chalusa, they're only trying to make him into a ben grusha ben chalusa, an invalid coin. The laka kiyam labam, which is only a negative prohibition, it's not capital punishment. Kivin shalaka, once they get lashes, chashav shapir, it's considered eidish atayachal azima. It's good enough to be called the punishment of kasha zama by just getting lashes. That's approach number one. Now let's see approach number two. V'od yeshamar, another answer. The gabe edis de ben grusha v'chalutza, in the case of testimony about an invalid coin, lo chashin and kla b'ata yochel azima. We don't care if it's not subject to the laws of kasha zaman. Why? How do you know that you need witnesses that are subject to the punishment of kasha zaman? Make kasha zaman from the words kasha zaman. But kasha zaman doesn't apply in this case. The mucha b'gemara, the kasha zaman lenechta l'gabe edis ben grusha v'lo kol klal le b'shem sachem ba'olam. It doesn't apply to this case. It's not relevant to it for whatever reason. The Gemara will say later. I will hasten gabe nam rasa, but the regular case of a married woman having relations, v'adai kasha zaman koin ame alayin. That is a regular case of kasha zaman. The imhisubaf, because they would have warned her that she'll be subject to death penalty, then she would have gotten killed. And if they would have been kasha zaman, they would have gotten killed. Miktale inu b'shuzim, they would become killed if they would be Muslim. And she would have gotten killed below if they weren't kasha zaman. L'chein be'inu ata yochel azima. So bottom line is that the two approaches in Tosas, one could say, this is where the beauty of Achron wants to say, that the two approaches are understanding the lashes here in two different ways. The first approach is saying that the lashes here are a kasha zamam lash. That's what it is. It's a substitute punishment, but it's a regular fulfillment of kasha zamam. And the second approach in Tosas says, no, it doesn't do with kasha zamam. It's a sidekick. There's a prohibition of sana. There's no action. But the Torah said, here you do get it, but it has nothing to do with kasha zaman per se. It's not a substitute punishment for kasha zaman. I want to, we'll see it inside in the disciples go along, but I want to just close with one idea to think about. So I mentioned